Good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Stuart Close Philosophy, and we were discussing regarding the biggest chapter from the Stuart Close, that is the Potentiation and Infinitesimal Dose, where he tried to explain the scientificity of the infinitesimal dose in the homeopathy. Generally, it has been claimed or it has been commented on homeopathy that it's a placebo effect, and this placebo effect is because you cannot find it out a material quantity of a medicine. And to this objection is overruled by Stuart Close in this specific chapter, where he has very clearly given the scientific basis of this infinitesimal dose. He has tried to correlate, in fact, throughout his book, he has tried to correlate the scientificity, the laws of basic sciences with the laws of homeopathy. And because of which it becomes quite easy and digestible to anyone who never believes in homeopathy. Here, he has taken in the help of law of physics, that is the matter is indestructible. You cannot destruct it completely. You can make it divisible up to infinity, and that is the law of physics. At the same time, there is one more law which is used in physics, that is law of least action, and again Stuart Close has tried to explain the concept behind law of minimum dose. Hahnemann have utilized all those specific laws of the basic sciences, and then he developed this specific method of potentiation. So while going through this potentiation method, he has tried his level best to utilize the mathematics also. He has tried to utilize the science also, and that's why this infinitesimal dose has a significant scientific value, even though you cannot measure. You cannot measure because it is the limitation of the science. It is not the limitation of the homeopathy. And that's why, even though you cannot visualize it by any means, it is present. So we are on page number 223, the last paragraph which we have to start. One Gravol has shown that the absorption of inorganic substances by living organism regulates itself chiefly according to the organic needs. Hence, such substances are taken into organism only in very small quantities or in soluble form. Iron offers a good illustration. The physiological school found by experience that natural chylbate springs were most efficacious in chloroanemic conditions, and yet the very strongest of these contains less than grain of iron in 16 ounces of water. In these latter days, dependence is largely placed on the so-called organic iron preparations derived from certain plants which contain very much less iron, and that existence is highly vitalized or colloidal state. So he is giving the example of one gravol. One gravol, he has mentioned the very specifically about the requirement of the minerals which are there inside the human being. And if you go through the even your PSM book, then open the chapter of the nutrition and find it out the how much quantity of nutrients are necessary. If we go the iron, how much iron is necessary, how much minerals, other minerals are necessary. For example, you require calcium, you require the phosphates, you require the mm, sulfates, you require many more minerals in your body, but how much quantity are so minute. And then if you give it in large doses, it will not going to work in the similar manner. But if you give it in finite preparation, for example, according to Sussler's methods, if you give it in the molecular form, it definitely works. It creates its action very instantaneously because it is there in the similar form. And this is very important thing, that very minute amount is necessary in order to effect a change in the nature, and that is what is called as a law of least action. A blood cell, among its other necessary constituents, contains a part of proportion of chloride of calcium, which requires for its arithmetical expression a decimal of 22 places, corresponding to 11 centesimal potency. We are reminded by this of the remark of celebrated physiologist Valentin, who said, "The extreme minuteness and immense quantity of ultimate elements everywhere engage our attention. The smallest image observable by the eye originates in millions of atmospheric vibrations. A grain of salt, hardly large enough to taste, contains billions of group of atoms, which no mortal eye can ever grasp. Nature works everywhere with an infinite multitude of infinitely small magnitudes, which become appreciable to our comparatively dull senses in their ultimate masses only." So here he gives the examples of different scientists, even a physicist, physiologist, and he explains over there that whatever is there in our body or whatever goes into our body or whatever is present in the environment, it always is in a very minute thing, in a minute quantity. But what has happened, it is not possible for our human naked eyes to observe that unless and until it becomes a substantial or a substance, unless and until it becomes a material. But there are many ingredients which are necessary for in our body to form the hemoglobin molecule. The theory is very thoroughly explained by Sussler. It requires three important salts to develop hemoglobin molecule. He explained over there, it is not only the iron which is required. He explains over there that patient requires paraphos, he requires natramure, and he requires calcareous phos. These are three salts which are required to develop a hemoglobin molecule, and he has given the whole physiology over there. But how much quantity? The quantity required is very minute at the molecular level. So, if it is not provided in that quantity, then there will be anemia. But if it is there in that specific quantity, no patient will going to get anemia because of deficiency. So, quantity required to make a change in homeopathy is very minute, and this is what he wants to explain. Further, he gives another example. Baron Liebig, the celebrated chemist, denied and attempted to convert homeopathic principles, especially doctrine of potentiation, saying that it was absurd to suppose that decreasing quantity would increase efficiency. But when he found that the common salt does not become suitable for as a function remedy until attenuated by in 50 times its own weight of water, he in fact potentiated it as Hahnemann did. Liebig contradicted himself many times on this subject in his writing. In his chemical letters, he says, the heaviest manuring with the earthy phosphates and coarse powder can hardly be compared in its effects with a far smaller quantity or minute divided state. For from this latter, we have the effect that a particle of manure is to be found in all parts of each small bit of soil. A single root fiber requires infinitely little from the ground which it touches, but it is necessary for its function and its existence that this minimum should be present at the very spot. So he has given one more example of a materialist from the chemistry, and who was denying the Hahnemann's theory, but who himself in his writing written that infinitesimal dose works. So there are many peoples, they have not understood the concept. They generally have denied the Hahnemann's theory, but when they experimented, then they accepted the Hahnemann's concept of infinitesimal dose. Even the soil itself can only receive and yield its chemical constituents in the form of solution. As Liebig says, if rainwater, which contains ammonia, potash, phosphoric acid, silicic acid in a state of solution, is brought into contact with soil, then these substances leave the solution among almost at once. The soil appropriates them from the water. If the soil did not possess this property, then these three cheap nutrient substances could not be kept in the earth. Thus, Liebig, the great opponent of homeopathy, gives involuntary testimony to the truth of doctrine, which specially excited his ire. Similar testimony abounds in all departments of science known to the present day. So these are the peoples who have denied Hahnemann's concept of infinitesimal dose ultimately came to the same point when they have made the experiment. So what he is explaining over here, this infinitesimal dose definitely has its existence and it has a capacity to make active change in wherever you used to use it. Even during proving it, if it shows its existence, and even while treating the patient on the law of similars, it has its own existence. So you cannot deny unless you experiment, and this is the message which comes from this. Then he turns towards the relation of inorganic substances to the living organism. Chemistry and physiology teach that many inorganic substances enter into the composition and structure of living organism, and that the ordinary or and normal source of these substances as proximate principles is the food and drink and the air and light which we take to supply the process of growth, nutrition and repair. These processes depend upon the vital functions of respiration, absorption, circulation, digestion, assimilation, secretion and excretion. The inorganic elements or substances, with the exception of air, water and light, are not appropriately directed from the inorganic realm, but indirectly or mediately through the vegetable kingdom, or once further removed through the animal kingdom. The animal organism cannot assimilate inorganic substances in their natural state. They must first be modified, raised to a higher plane of existence, as it were, render more similar or assimilable to the substance of an animal organism before they can be appropriated. In other words, they must be potentized, dynamized, and vitalized, that is, raised to the plane of life by passing through the intermediate vegetable kingdom. Homeopathic potentiation is an artificial method of accomplishing this and for the therapeutic purpose. Here he has compared it with our food. For example, we used to consume the vegetables. We gain those vegetables, those gains their nutrients from the soil. How much quantity of nutrient enters inside the plant? The plants themselves requires nitrates, the plants themselves requires the phosphates, the plants themselves requires the ureas and all those minerals in certain small quantities. It is getting absorbed inside the root and it enters into the plant. This has been converted to such a degree that it becomes palatable for us when we consume that vegetable. If we consume that material phosphate, material iron, material urea, material sulfate, it never used to produce any change in us. But the same, if it goes through the channel from the vegetable, what has happened? It has potentized, it has converted. It has been converted from the crude form to the palatable form. It has been converted from the potential energy to the kinetic energy, and it further gets potentized when it enters in our mouth. We used to chew, we have to chew, we have to swallow, then it gets churned inside the stomach, and every time it is potentized and succused, and potency is liberated, the energy is liberated. So this is the natural process of potentization. If we consume the animal food, for example, we consume chicken, mutton or anything, it is double digested protein, double digested with sources of those things goes inside our body. They are more potent than the vegetable, and that's why more energy is there whenever you consume the animal food. They are more stronger than the persons who used to consume the vegetable food. because double digested proteins, double digested minerals enters inside the body. It is same process happens when we prepare the homeopathic medicines with the help of artificial method. The method which is there happens in our body is natural. When we prepare medicine, it is an artificial method. So potentiation is an artificial method of liberating the energy from the crude drug substance and expressing its properties. So he is very cleverly showing his experience to explain all those things. The living organism, vegetable or animal, can only assimilate that which is similar to itself, that is similar to the elements of the own structure. The entire process of growth and assimilation, as it progresses from lower to higher forms, is simply like appropriating like, which it be the blade of grass appropriating the molecule of silica, the ox appropriating the blade of grass, or the man appropriating the flesh of ox in the form of juicy beef steak. Even the blade of grass can only assimilate the silica in the form of silicic acid, which is partially silica dissolved in rainwater. These processes represent the natural physiological or organic potentiation, air and light being imponderable, and water being fluid and semi-ponderable represent an intermediate scale of natural potency. We can hardly call them high potencies because there are so many other potencies in nature's realm of finer forces that are so much higher, they are high enough or even far enough removed from the grosser forms of inorganic substances. However, to be assimilable by living organism and are rendered so by sort of natural potentiation. We may get some idea from of the relative importance of these degrees of potentiation to the living organism by recalling that a man may live 40 days without food. He may live 5 to 10 days without water, but he cannot live 10 minutes without the air. So he has given very clearly the concept behind it. He explains over there that the natural potentiation happens when we consume the food. A very minute quantity it has been absorbed by the plants and it converted into the palatable form. It means nothing but the potentiation. When the animals consume that food and enters in their body, again it gets processed and again it is converted into more palatable form or more stronger form and which carries more energy. And when human consumes that animal food, then it is double digested things which are potentized double and have liberated more and more energy inside it. So this is the natural potentiation happens to be there. But how much quantity does it enters in your body? It is very minute. But still it works. It has its own action on your body. It has its own existence on human body and it used to produce its effects on the human body. So he is trying to explain how this potentiation happens in the nature and how Hahnemann got that idea of potentiation. And what he says further, between each of the four realms of nature, that is mineral, vegetable, animal, and spiritual, there is a chasm to be bridged. So that the representative organism of each realm consists of what might be called machinery necessary for transforming the material of the next lower realm into the likeness of its own substance. So he is explaining the concept very clearly over there that there are different sources. There is a nature where you get the mineral source, there vegetable source, then animal source, and one more source is spiritual. And from them you carry those ingredients with energy. What energy is there is in potential form. You have to convert it into your palatable form or which is also called as potentized form or also called to be a kinetic form. Then it starts working. And that's why the potential energy present in a iron particle never used to be of use, even though you consume it. It never gets released. It is passed as it is, because body will not going to get its effects. But when it is specifically potentized according to the Hahnemannian method or according to the pharmacy, then same iron starts showing its effects. Same iron starts producing its own effects. And this method is nothing but the potentiation. So this method is nothing but bringing out the qualities and properties of the crude drug substance into the activity. In scientific words, it brings out the potential energy present over there into the kinetic form, to which we call vital energy. And this is the most scientific method which he is trying to explain over there. I think we'll stop over here. Tomorrow, if possible, we'll have a lecture. If it is not possible, we'll meet directly on Monday. I will let you know that whether it is possible to conduct lecture tomorrow or not. So if it is possible, I will let you know. Otherwise, we'll directly meet on Monday. Thank you. And today evening also, I will let you know regarding the session after some time. Thanks and good night.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.